Celia, 888-589-8840 if you want to queue your call up. And we've got Fred Jackson. Fred Jackson, American Family News. And Fred's going to give us some updates on some news stories. By the way, the markets did open up flat, as I indicated. They went down about 6 points, give or take. The Dow is now up 30 points. So the Dow's up 30. The S&P is up slightly. So is the NASDAQ. So who knows? Maybe we could have another day, but they're talking about apparently Ben Bernanke's line of questioning. The comments were received well. The comment that was received well and why the markets are excited is because he said it looks like we have no intention of easing up our $85 billion a month buying program. Of course, the markets love that. Creates and keeps going with that false positive that the market is feeling. Fred Jackson. Hey, Fred, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. Well, in about a month's time, March 26th, March 27th, the United States Supreme Court is getting set to hear challenges to the Defense of Marriage Act. That is the law of the land right now, which says marriage should only be between a man and a woman. Now, as we previously reported, the Obama administration, the Justice Department just last Friday, put a petition into the court, which the court will consider. The Obama administration wants to strike down DOMA. President Barack Obama, of course, coming out several months ago saying his views on marriage have evolved. He now accepts homosexual marriage. So they want to strike down the law called DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which, by the way, was brought in by President Bill Clinton way back in 1996. The other case at the same time that's going to be heard in those 2 days is a challenge to Proposition 8. That is the California law, which was passed by a vote by the people of California back in 2008, upholding marriage as only between a man and a woman. Now, what's going on right now over the next few days is various interests are filing friend of the court briefs. Amongst them are a bunch of companies that are very familiar, I know, to our listeners. And these are people who are opposed, companies who are opposed to the results of Prop 8. In other words, they favor homosexual marriage. Those companies include Apple, Nike, Facebook, Morgan Stanley, Intel Corp., Xerox Corp., AIG Inc., and Cisco Systems. We are reporting this morning that all of those companies, and a law firm I think working for all of them is Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe Law Firm. They're handling the Proposition 8 brief and said more names, more companies could be added to the list before it files tomorrow. Now, in the Proposition 8 brief, Attorney Joshua Rosenkranz wrote that companies believe, now listen to this, folks. They said companies believe that the ban and other laws like it, quote, inflict real and wholly unnecessary injury on business, end quote. Their brief goes on to say, by marginalizing same-sex couples and foreclosing gay men and lesbians from forming married families, these bans on equal access to marriage stigmatize gay men and lesbians and deprive them of the benefits intrinsic to marriage, he added. So there you have it. Some of the major companies, Dan, in this country, some of the major companies are going to come out and fight against biblical marriage.
You know, it's amazing to me, Fred. I remember a day when companies, those same companies you mentioned, were so opposed to this because they didn't want to have to pay the benefits.
Yeah.
You know, it was a dollar and cents thing. And they said, listen, this is going to cost us, you know, a company like Cisco Systems or Xerox that has thousands and thousands of employees, you know, are saying, wait a minute, we don't want to have to pay the additional health benefits for these couples, and they were opposed of it because it came down to dollars and cents. I wonder if with the onset of Obamacare, is that maybe not as big a concern, or more likely it is what I've been arguing about with the business community for so long, is that their ideology just totally gets in their way of any kind of common sense as far as running a business, regardless of the fact that it's getting in the way of biblical principles, which is more important than anything.
We will be watching this and, of course, getting reaction to it. The Democratic governor of Arkansas, Mike Beebe, yesterday vetoed a bill to ban most abortions in Arkansas at 20 weeks into pregnancy. Now, that was a measure which was approved by an 80-10 vote in the state house in Arkansas and by a 25-7 vote in the state Senate. But the Democrat governor, Mike Beebe, yesterday vetoing it. Now, the only way to overcome his veto would be for the legislators there to take a vote, and the majority of them vote to uphold this law. And the story goes on to say, and we're getting reaction to this today, that this is very unusual for the governor to do. But in his veto letter, he said this, quote, this law would impose a ban on a woman's right to choose an elective, non-therapeutic abortion before viability. That's according to him. If it became law, would squarely contradict Supreme Court precedent. So there you have it, the governor going against the wishes of the vast, vast majority of legislators, both in the House and the Senate in Arkansas.
Well, will they have this vote to override his veto?
I have to assume that they will because they voted so strongly in favor of this law. I have to assume that they will call for a vote on this, but I have not seen that yet.
Well, we've got a lot of Arkansas people that listen to this program. I know that. And boy, I'll tell you, that is just unbelievable and just such just sad. It's just sad. Anyway.
Absolutely. We have a lot of listeners in Texas too, Dan. Here's a story for you folks in Texas. An incident at Lumberton High School in Lumberton, Texas. They apparently have an Islamic propaganda course there in which female students were encouraged to dress in burqas, and students were taught that Islamic terrorists are freedom fighters. Now, according to a Daily Caller account, students in a world geography class at Lumberton High dressed in Islamic clothing were taught that Islamist terrorists are in fact freedom fighters, and were told that problems afflicting Egypt were brought about by democracy, but are now being fixed by the current Muslim Brotherhood regime. Now, folks, did you get that? They're saying their propaganda in this course is that the problem was democracy, but the Muslim Brotherhood regime, which has terrorist links, is fixing things up, according to this course. Now, the Washington Times reports that State Senator Dan Patrick, the chairman of the Texas Senate Education Committee, has promised an investigation of the incident. Patrick suggested that the lesson was anti-American, since it seemed to denigrate democracy as well as being discriminatory against Christians. Now, what is he talking about there, Dan? Well, of course, he's talking about, can you imagine, Christmas pageants, Christmas plays with the Christmas stories have been banned in our schools, but here is an indoctrination course on Islam telling the female students to dress in burqas and informing them that terrorists are not really terrorists, but they are freedom fighters.
Well, I think we should get all the Islamic students and dress them up in a manger scene for Christmas. And, this is a public school, right?
It is.
I'm telling you, I would love to raise money to charter the plane to fly them all over to Egypt on a one-way charter and say, all right, this Muslim Brotherhood, here you go. You can have this government that our president put into power, by the way. This is it's an insane story. I can't, it is amazing and the taxpayers of this school district?
Exactly.
Are they up in arms?
Oh, they are. And apparently there's going to be more discussions on this. And as I say, this state legislator is not going to let this go. State Senator Dan Patrick. I am sure there are others. I'm sure there are many parents in that area. But this is all part of, according to these reports, it's a widely used electronic lesson plan called C-Scope in relation to the Islamic Studies incident. And it describes itself, this C-Scope, as providing a TEKS, text-aligned and updated K-12 curriculum and assessment. So my speculation is, Dan, this could well be used in other districts in Texas, but this is the first I've heard of this kind of Islamic propaganda course. Now, let's stick with schools for a second. I have been getting phone calls over the last 24 hours in the newsroom from Batesville, Mississippi, not far here from our home base in Tupelo, Mississippi, about 60 miles or so. And there's a controversy brewing down there over the fact that a male student showed up and declared that he is now a female on Monday. And he's only being identified in press reports as Leah, but apparently this individual has the support of the ACLU, so this was part of a plan there. And as I say, I've been getting phone calls. We're getting emails into the newsroom. And I'm not sure if it's related to this incident, but I have an email from a teacher that they say they were given a directive that they can no longer send out emails with biblical references or with the words prayer in them. I had another phone call or email from a person in that community saying the teachers were told to take down any posters that say, "In God We Trust." As I say, I'm not sure if it's related to what happened on Monday. But it appears that Batesville, the South Panola High School there, which, by the way, is one of the best football teams around, but that school apparently is becoming the focus of a lot of controversy, and we understand that many parents have already declared they plan to descend on the next school board meeting coming up next month there, and they have a lot to say about this.
Wow, that's unbelievable, too, Fred. And I know this ideology permeating America is trying to get rid of God in a big way. And, if President Obama can get rid of our guns and our Bibles, he'll usher in his radical Marxist regime without any problem whatsoever. I know I'm sounding very cynical here this morning, but you have come on here and just aggravated the heck out of me, Fred. I really appreciate it. And I didn't need that much help.
No, I know. But, no. It comes naturally to you, Dan.
It does. Yeah, it does.
But Dan, what this points to, these last two stories, it involves our education system. And it disturbs me when adults are confronted with this. But these are kids now, kids who are influenced by authority figures. And in the Texas case, being basically told that there's no such thing as terrorists, they're really freedom fighters, and that the problem is democracy. If you can imagine that, this is what our kids, your taxpayers' dollars, if you're in Lumberton, Texas, your taxpayers' dollars are going to this propaganda course to teach your kids that democracy is the bad thing and that the Muslim Brotherhood are the good guys.
Well, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know, where do we go from here? And I guess, we've got to rise up, and I'm sure that there are plenty of Christian law firms that are going to come to the defense of some of these students or some of these teachers that are going to stand up against this. And hopefully the school district will listen to the taxpayers when they show up at the school board in Mississippi in this other case. And, it's amazing how our elected officials and obviously teachers aren't elected, but they're paid by our tax dollars.
Yeah.
How all of that is forgotten. It doesn't matter. And yet the taxpayers that are paying this money have no say or no rights over any of this.
And at the same time, Dan, these people who introduce these sorts of things and have this anti-Christian attitude are also fighting the moves that have been taking place out there to try to have charter schools, are fighting against the right of parents to select a school of their choice and use their taxpayers' dollars to get them out of this propaganda septic tank that they're in.
Mm. Well, Fred, I guess I'll have you back.
Oh.
I sure appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do to, get our audience, my audience anyway, some of these stories, because it's so important. I don't want to let them go by, and I sure appreciate you stopping by here this morning. Fred Jackson, our American Family News Director, working